Okay, in this video we're going to learn the basics of writing an exponential equation from 2 points, from a table, or from a graph. Our basic exponential equation is y equals a times b to the x, where a is the starting amount and b is the growth factor and x is the units of time. If b is greater than 1, then the function is said to be an increasing, a growing equation. If b is a decimal or a fraction between 0 and 1, then it's said to be a decaying or decreasing function. And if you need to know what percent your equation is growing by, then you need to do some math with b. b, the growth factor, is equal to 1 plus r. r is the rate written as a decimal. Oops. I should say r equals percent as a decimal. So you'll have to move your decimal place to find the percent. All right, so let's give it a try. Find the exponential equation that has the following values. F of 0 equals 12 and f of 1 equals 60. So that's giving us 2 points. That's giving us 0, 12 and 1, 60. Remember, what's inside the parentheses of a function notation is the x, and the output is the y. Okay, so when we think about a needs to be the starting point, then that's going to be the y value when x is 0. x is 0 is considered the starting point. And then we have this other point, which we can use as x and y. And like we've done every other time we've solved for an equation, we'll plug those 3 values we do have in and solve for the one we don't know, which in this case will be b. So we will have 60 equals 12 times b to the x, which is a 1. Okay. Order of operations here, we're going to divide by 12. So 5 equals b to the first. And we should know that b to the first is the same as b. So b really is 5. Let's go ahead and draw that little box there. Our equation, though, is what we get when we plug in a and b. So our final equation will be y equals 12 times 5. Oops, come on, parenthesis. To the x. 12 times 5 to the x. Does this equation grow or decay? Well, since b is 5, which is bigger than 1, then we know this is a growth equation. And then what is the rate of change? Well, if b equals 5 and b equals 1 plus r, then we have 5 equals 1 plus r. We just have to solve it. Subtract 1 will get us 4, so r equals 4. Move the decimal places 2 spots. It's behind the number. So move the decimal 2 places. That would be 400% growth. My goodness, my stylist and I are not getting along. 400% growth. Okay, and one more example. If f of 0 is 300, then a is my 300. And then if f of 3, that means 3 is my x, and 175 is my y, I can write my equation. Well, I can find b, so I can write my equation. So plugging in, we have 175 equals 300 times b to the third. Okay, so we'll divide by 300, which is 0.583 repeating. So 0.58 and then Okay, so what if I gave you a graph instead of points? Where's the A found on a graph? Well, it should be where x is 0. X is always 0 when you're on the y-axis. So we're looking for the y-intercept. So I'll just put y-intercept here for notes. So our point would be 0, 5. So A will be 5. How can we find B? Well, we need an x and a y again. Typically, I'm going to give you a highlighted point. Here it is right here. So let's see, that was our A. A was 5. And then here's our xy. Over 1 to the right, and then up, looks like 2.5. So 1, 2.5. That'll be x and y. So we'll do the same thing we did with, we had 2 points because we have the same information. We know y is supposed to be 2.5. And that'll equal A, which is 5, times B, which we're looking for. And then x is just 1. So we'll undo. In this case, we have to divide by 5, divide by the A value every time. That'll give us 0.5 equals B to the 1. And B to the 1 we know is the same as B. So that's our B value right there. It's between 0 and 1. So it's a decay. And if B equals 1 plus R, then we can now find what the rate is, the rate of decay. So we know it's 0.5 equals 1 plus R. Subtract 1 to find R. R will equal negative 0.5. Multiply by 100, so we're moving the decimal 2 spaces. So we have a decrease of 50%. Our equation, which I hadn't written yet, is y equals our A we know is 5 from looking at the y-intercept. Our B was 0.5 because we solved for it. And then x is time periods, which can be anything. Okay, so here's another graph just to be sure we got it. Remember, when you're looking for A, you look for the y-intercept. So here it is at 2. And then we need some other value for x. We want to look very carefully at the equation. This one over here is at negative 2, 1 might work, but negative x's are difficult to work with. So try to find a positive value. I'm going to use this one right here. 3, 6 as x and y. Alright, so y equals A times B to the x, which will suddenly be 6 equals 2 times B to the 3rd. If I can get my stylus to write a 3rd. Okay, so that's ridiculous. There we go. So now we want to divide by 2. Always divide by the A. 3 equals B to the 3rd. And then we need to use the type of root that will get rid of our exponent. This one, it needs to be a cube root. So B equals the cube root of 3. 1.442. So our equation will be y equals 2 times 1.442 to the x. The final equation has numbers for a and b and variables for x and y. This one will be a growth equation because b is larger than 1. And we can find the rate by doing b equals 1 plus r. So 1.442 equals 1 plus r. Subtract the 1 to get r alone. r will equal 0.442. Multiply by 100 to create a percent, so we'll get 44.2% increase since it's a growth equation. All right, lastly, what do I do if I'm given a table? A table still has 2 points. If you want to, you can write them as points. This one right here is a point, 0, 900. And then x and y, here's another point, 2 and 506.25. Okay, the y value paired with 0, the y-intercept is a, so that's going to be 900. So then we can use 2 and 506.25 as x and y. So y equals 506.25 equals a, which is 900, times b to the x, which is a 2. So we're going to divide by 900. Which is 0.5625. That's the whole thing, so it doesn't seem worthwhile to round it. I'll just write the whole 5625 equals b to the second. And then the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So regular old square root. What is the square root of 0.5625? 0.75. So since that's smaller than 1, I know this is a decay. I know that b equals 1 plus r, so 0.75 equals 1 plus r. And then subtract 1, so negative 0.25 equals r. So move the decimal 2 spaces to the right, so it's a 25% decrease because it was negative. What was the equation? We never wrote the equation. Remember, you go back to y equals, and you place in a, which was 900, and you place in b, which was 0.75, and you leave x for time periods for someone to plug in later. Okay, if you have any questions you need to ask them in class.